Hey guys, it's Thomas from Marathon Handbook here. Today I'm going to be sharing my top 6 strategies for getting through your next ultramarathon. Okay, strategy number 1 is to assume that the race is going to be tough. In other words, be humble. If you assume that the race is going to be tough and that you're going to suffer pain, discomforts and setbacks and that you might not even finish the race, then you're pretty well mentally prepared for what's going to come. If you turn up at the start line of an ultramarathon and think you can probably wing it and you'll do fine, then the chances are much greater that you're just going to suffer. So if you prepare yourself for pain when it comes, you'll be inviting it in and ready for it rather than avoiding it and be surprised by it. When setbacks do occur, you can start to see them as part of the journey and something you almost anticipated, and you can deal with them rather than letting them get the best of you. Okay, so tip number 2 is to just focus on the next aid station. So ultramarathons are super long naturally, and when you're running races like half marathons or marathons, it's easy to just focus on the finish line. But in an ultramarathon, sometimes just trying to focus on the finish line, it's just mentally is such a huge task to comprehend how far away it is that it can be overwhelming. So instead of thinking about the whole race that you've got ahead of you, just think about the next aid station. So most ultramarathons have got aid stations every 10 kilometers or so. So what you're doing is essentially breaking up your ultramarathon into mini race chunks every 10 kilometers. That way it's much easier to digest the race mentally, easier to think about the race in your head, and it's less likely that you'll get overwhelmed by the distance that you're trying to cover on foot in one day. Number 3 is to keep a strict fueling and hydration schedule. One thing that happens in the latter stages of an ultramarathon is suddenly you get a bit mentally fuzzy. It takes a lot of concentration just to remember when the last time you ate was, when the last time you drank were. So you just got to focus on that. My advice is to keep your nutrition and hydration strategy as simple as possible. So for example, I eat 1 gel every hour on the hour and then anything else on top of that. Same goes for hydration. I have set quantities that I'll drink every hour on the hour, or at every aid station, I'll fill up with the same amount. That way you're almost automating the process. You're not leaving too much to fate or to chance itself. Basically means you're not making any big decisions while you're running your ultramarathon, because as I say, once you're into especially the back half of your ultramarathon, it's super easy that mental fog takes over. Super easy to get confused about what you last ate, what you last drank, and get yourself in knots. So if you can make your hydration and fueling strategy as simple as possible and just stick to it, for example, every hour on the hour, it's hard to go wrong, then you'll do better. Okay guys, so tip number 4 is to base your performance on your perceived exertion as opposed to your speed. So in shorter races, it's common for runners to base their performance on their speed. In other words, while they're running, they'll constantly be checking their GPS watch. They'll have a target pace in mind. They might be trying to finish a marathon in under 4 hours or whatever, so that drives their whole performance. So that's fine for shorter races. When it comes to ultramarathons, unless you're really competing and you've got a lot of ultra running experience, that strategy probably isn't a good idea. The reason is an ultramarathon is just so long. If you try and run a preconceived pace the whole time, it's likely that you're not listening to your body and you're going to end up pushing too hard, which means down the line, towards the end of your ultramarathon, you're really going to suffer. Also, ultramarathons usually take place on trails, which are a lot less predictable. There's a lot of ups and downs and varying terrain. And to try and have a preconceived pace for how you're tackling those trails is usually a bad idea. So instead, I like to think of ultramarathon performance in terms of your rate of perceived exertion. So rate of perceived exertion is a very simple scale from 1 to 10 based on how hard you feel you're pushing at any one moment. 1 out of 10 being almost no effort whatsoever, like sitting, walking very slowly, and 10 out of 10 being an unsustainable sprint, which you could maybe keep going for 10 seconds. When it comes to ultramarathons, my general recommendation is you want to sit somewhere in the middle. You want to be sitting around 5 or 6 out of 10 in terms of how hard you feel you're pushing at any one moment. You want to be pushing at a level that feels sustainable. Usually this translates roughly to a conversational pace. So you should be running along at a pace at which you feel you could sustain a conversation with somebody running next to you. This is almost a conservative rule. It means you're probably not going to be pushing as hard as what you feel you could, at least for the first half of the race. But it means when you come into the second half of your ultramarathon, your legs are in better condition, you're more relaxed, you've got more energy reserves than what you would have had otherwise. So it's a conservative approach. It's based on getting you to the finish line as comfortably as possible, as opposed to trying to race and meet some predefined target. So guys, tip number 4, forget about your pace, or at least don't prioritize your pace. Listen to your body, try and focus on rate of perceived exertion. Okay guys, tip number 5 is don't try and tune out of your race. So obviously an ultramarathon can be overwhelming to think of, and it's easy to get into this mindset of thinking that you should try and distract yourself while you're in the ultramarathon. This might sound like a weird thing for anybody who hasn't run an ultra, but it's something I've been guilty of, and a lot of friends I've talked to also have noted this. So it's something we've all recognized, that we're almost anticipating the discomfort that we're going to experience for a few hours, and in preparation we prepare things to try and kind of tune out or distract ourselves from the ultramarathon. For example, I used to, before long races, load up my iPhone with a lot of audiobooks or podcasts or music, thinking that I knew I was going to be uncomfortable, and if I had something I could listen to, I could kind of tune out of that discomfort. And the truth is that this just doesn't work. You think it's going to work, you think it's going to get you through, but all it does is it kind of numbs you, and it kind of makes you feel removed from the experience of running the ultramarathon, and it can make your mood really plummet. So what I'd advise is you definitely take some music or something to listen to for your ultramarathon, but don't rely on it. Don't assume that things are going to get so tough that you're going to fall back into this, listening to this thing to tune out. The truth is, when you're running an ultra, things can get so uncomfortable that it's impossible to distract yourself from it. And most ultra runners actually find that leaning in and focusing on the running, the task in hand, really helps them. Okay, so the last tip is to underestimate your performance. So guys, this kind of goes hand in hand with the rate of perceived exertion tip. The whole idea with this one, it's all about mental expectations. And when I say underestimate your performance, I want you to take a rough idea of how long you think you're gonna take to run the ultra, and add 20 or 30%. And tell yourself that's how long you're gonna take. The reason is you could well take that long, but this is more of a mental trick. And what you're doing is preparing yourself for a long and arduous race, when in actual fact, maybe you're gonna finish a bit quicker. It's a little mental trick that I've found to be super effective. For example, when you're running from checkpoint to checkpoint to checkpoint, say there's 10 kilometers between each one, I know I can run that in between 50 and 60 minutes, but I would always tell myself, okay, the next checkpoint is 70 to 75 minutes away. That way, when I arrive at the next checkpoint, I kind of get a small mental boost. I know it sounds kind of stupid, sounds kind of silly, but it's just a mental trick where you overestimate how long it's going to take you to run one section of your race or the whole race. And then as you complete each section and you're actually doing better, it really helps motivate you and push you on. Hey guys, so those were my 6 mental strategies for getting through your next ultramarathon. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like. If you subscribe, you'll get to see more of my stuff. Also check out marathonhandbook.com for much more stuff on ultra running and all sorts of running stuff. And you can check out my premium ultra running course, the Ultra Runner's Playbook. That's it guys, cheers for watching.